We're going to give folks a minute or two to join as they end their previous meetings from the previous hour. We'll start in a moment. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Robert Schoenfield, participating in this webinar today from California. So, welcome, and again, thanks for joining us. Over the last few years, we've seen a lot in the market with all the changes that we're all going through, and we've seen it also within our own company. And we're going to share a little bit about both with you today. But as we thought about what's been happening over the last couple of years, we realized that back in March of 2020, that when we first entered into the uncertainty of the pandemic, I think we all thought that we would shut down and from a work perspective, go remote for 3 months, maybe 6 months. We'd get past the pandemic, and then we'd come out of it, and things would be normal. And fast forward 18 months from March 2020, we're still in the midst of the pandemic. It has changed, it's evolved, but it's still with us. And clearly, our work has changed. It's changed, and it's continuing to change. Really wanting all their employees back in office for their strategic reasons they want to. Companies like Netflix, companies like Goldman, and others like Twitter have said, we're going to stay remote, and we're going to give employees options to be 100% remote. And some of them want us to be in the office as well, and have a bit of a hybrid approach. But one thing that for sure is happening today is that companies and employees are now resetting the rules, both at the management level and at the core employee level, resetting where we work, how we work, what's expected from companies, what's expected from employees, and what's expected for the customer interaction in this era and moving forward. So we're going to spend a little time talking about that today, the changing work environment. We'll share a little bit more about Krisp and how we play in this new world. Where's the market heading? We'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Any questions, any comments that come along the way, please go ahead and post them in the channel, and they'll be sent along to me, and we'll address them at the end of this webinar. So we know that COVID has changed a lot throughout the world. Personally, we can all look at what's happened, and then professionally. And before COVID, online video communications was becoming more prevalent, but certainly once COVID hit, it became video and online communications, web-based communications became the norm and became the requirement. It was the way we communicate. It's the way we're able to collaborate. It's the way we're able to stay in touch, again, both personally and professionally. And it's really changed how remote was a flash cut. We all remember what it was like. We didn't have the tools. We weren't really prepared with our processes. But 18 months later, we are in a little bit better place in terms of being efficient, being comfortable, and getting our work done with online meetings. And it used to be that the physical meetings were really mandatory for many, many transactions or functions within a company or between companies. And they've all been replaced with online meetings, and we've gotten it done. The economy's grown, companies and industries have moved forward. When I look at our own company, what we've done over the past few years in terms of raising capital from investors, securing contracts with tier one banks and some of the largest contact centers around the world. Historically, that would have required multiple in-person meetings between companies and between teams, and how to secure agreements without being in person and having that physical in-person relationship. For contact center agents, if you think about a contact center before COVID, most all agents were on site in a center, it's a highly supervised activity, both physical supervision and also technology supervision within the contact center. And just like the rest of us, contact center agents, flash cut, were forced to work from home, and they weren't prepared for it. If you think about all the tools and supervisors in a contact center, those are not fit their agents to ensure that they had all the tools to support their customers, that there was a secure and private environment, and it wasn't going to adversely impact customer satisfaction or any of the other key metrics for contact centers. And as part of this, with the expansion of web-based communications, more and more virtual contact center models came to market. Some of the larger traditional BPOs already had at-home and cloud-based solutions, but we've seen an increase in the number of companies that are 100% remote, who only hire home-based agents who are able to train and onboard remotely and provide all the tools in a 100% remote environment. This has turned out, certainly our technology requirements have changed because of remote work. So our communication tools, our access to data, our security and privacy tools, when we're talking with customers about financial transactions, or when we're talking about healthcare issues. So the technology requirements have changed, and both the companies and their suppliers have responded to this work environment by innovating and bringing tools that used to be focused on in-office work and now have been evolved and really elevated for at-home work. And staying in the contact center, one of the things that CCW has published is that while customers have many different channels to communicate back to their companies that they're engaged with for customer service, chat, email remains number one, meaning customers at the end of the day, when they can't get something resolved, want to talk to an agent, and they want to be able to have that personal interaction, even though on the front end they may be getting qualified through a bot. Phone and email one-on-one interaction continues to be the number one requirement from customers as it relates to contact center interactions. And as part of that, there's an increasing need, a renewed need for empathy, both within companies and also with the customer service agents and their customers. In the early days of COVID, there was a lot of tolerance by customers about what everybody was, shared empathy. As we've moved in past the early stages of COVID-19, customers, end users, have become less tolerant now that we're 18 months into it, and there's an expectation that the technology and the processes should be in place so that sort of distractions or concerns from the customer would fade away. And what really is in play there is the contact center agent listening, understanding, and support from those on the other side of an online call. Now, as more and more people are working remotely, which typically is at home, but not always. But typically is at home. Not everybody has a home setup the way I do here. I have this is a home office. It's typically quiet, but not everybody has the luxury of a quiet home office. Sometimes it's shared space. Sometimes it's in an apartment that has a lot of background noise problems. And these background noise problems really do impact both internal communications and communications with customers and with prospects. From a team perspective, if you think about being on a Zoom call or a Microsoft Teams call where there are maybe 6 or 8 people on that call, it only takes one person to have a background noise problem that adversely impacts that particular call. Miscommunication, there's some background noise that's causing disruption not only for that individual, but for everybody on that call. For contact center agents, whether they're working at home or whether they're working in the contact center, distracting background noises impact both the customer and the customer satisfaction and also the agents themselves. So early days in COVID, customers were being a little bit more tolerant, as I said before, but quickly, about 90 days into it, the number of complaints around background noise skyrocketed, like by 80%. All these agents were pushed from an office, a secure, quiet environment, to working at home. In the Philippines, for example, which has a very, very large BPO industry, and about 80% of the BPO's customers are North American corporations. The agents in the Philippines, some of them work, there are parents, grandparents, and kids there, and there's not a dedicated workspace. So, and it's a very, very important job for that individual and their family. They're also, and that has certain noise problems that are urban. There are also agents that work in rural areas, live and work in rural areas. And of course, there aren't urban noises there, but there are noises that cause concern for customers. Things like roosters. They weren't quite sure where the agent was sitting. But it translates to negative customer satisfaction. So about 3 months into COVID, there was a reduction in CSAT, customer satisfaction scores, because of noise. For the agents themselves, they felt less productive. They knew that the noise was causing a problem with their customers, and it would be have an adverse impact on their quality assurance rating within the company, and potentially impacting their job. During presenting their solution out to the market, certainly quality and professionalism matters. And when we're doing events like this and I'm at home in my home office, if I had unpredictable noises or background noises that were distracting, I think there would be a concern or a problem with those listening and participating in today's webinar. So it can impact the professionalism of speakers, whether you're doing a one-on-one call or a one-to-many with the market or with customers. So I think we've all had experiences, whether calling into a contact center and hearing background noise there, or being on online calls where there are distracting noises. I'm curious about which noises annoy you. I've got a couple of pet peeves. We're all busy. We have multiple Zoom or Microsoft Teams or WebEx calls per day. There's not always time to eat lunch or a snack. And if we're in an office, a lot of times we'll go into a meeting, we'll bring a little bit of food in with us. Sometimes we'll have lunch meetings. But when we're online and folks are eating and they don't recognize that their crunching of the potato chips or the ruffling of their wrapping of their sandwich comes across loud and clear to everybody else. And that one's really, really distracting for me, particularly when I'm a little bit hungry. But we see, our customers share with us some of their biggest noise challenges. And one of them is actually when agents are on calls with their customers and their customers are in noisy places. And it impacts the interaction. So those noisy places when customers are out in the real world are either in their car or they're on a street, in an airport, and it causes a lot of challenges between the agent and their customer, where the agent's continuing to have to ask for the customer to repeat what their either question or comment is. Certainly dogs. Folks, when the FedEx driver shows up, the dog's going to bark, and it always happens during an important time when you're having to talk. In COVID-19, folks working from home who have young children at home and have childcare at home, inevitably, by definition, they're going to be kids yelling, screaming, playing, crying, getting hurt, and it's going to happen during a call. And it's distracting, it's stressful for everybody in the home when that's happening, but it's also very distracting and a little bit concerning for those on the call to hear that in the background and wonder what's going on. In contact centers or even on online meetings, when somebody's taking notes, the constant clicking and clacking of keyboards typing, while everybody understands that that's great, somebody's taking notes, it's a bit distracting to hear click 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 over the course of a 30 or 60-minute meeting. And then the one that also sort of concerns me when I'm calling into a call center, when that agent's actually in the call center and I'm speaking about a private transaction like a financial call, even though I'm talking about something that's very personal and very private. So that background chatter of 10 or 20 or 50 people is somewhat something that's distracting and concerning when dealing with contact center agents. So we're going to introduce a video about what is Krisp, and I'll come back and show you a couple live examples of use cases. So please enjoy this video.
Working from home can be full of distractions. Krisp cuts out background noise, leaving you crystal clear. Keeping focused while communicating with colleagues and customers. Krisp. Sound clear wherever you are.
All right, so thank you. We have hundreds of thousands of users around the world, and what has really been interesting for us is that we're learning more and more about how customers use Krisp and where they use Krisp and what types of problems they're trying to fix. As I mentioned before, we have users that back and forth, and one of the things they're looking for is a consistency of experience, their work experience, their customer experience, the tools they use. And for us, and what I'm going to share with you momentarily is that the noise types and the background noises and the sources, the distractors are different at home than they are in the office. So let's go through a few of those. So as I mentioned, I'm here in my home office. I've got Krisp on. You can see with our visual widget here that Krisp is on and it's working because it's telling me it's green. If I turn Krisp off, it's still pretty quiet in here. I don't There's not any sort of distraction or background noise. But I always have Krisp on to give myself the comfort. Now, my dog is typically quiet, except when she's not. So when folks have dogs in their office or in the next room when a call's on, and if they didn't have Krisp, this is what those on certainly this webinar would be hearing. If we were on an online call, this is what you'd be hearing. If you were a customer care agent talking to your customers, this is what your customers would be hearing. But when I toggle Krisp on, the dog's still barking. I still hear the dog, but I know that nobody else can. So therefore, dog's barking come through, and it causes a distraction for everybody on the call. So those are, if you think about it, there are noises inside the home that we think we can control, but sometimes they happen. Dogs bark when dogs bark, kids scream when they scream, the doorbell rings when the doorbell rings. There are also scenarios where there are noises emanating from outside your home. And if I think about New York City, for example, we have customers who have SDR sales teams in New York City. And I'll turn Krisp off here. If there's an emergency in your neighborhood and there's a siren going on and others can hear it, they're going to be wondering what's going on. Are you okay? Is there a fire? And it's going to stop the call and force the user, me, to go on mute, would mean I can't interact, or to have this coming through the background. But when I turn on Krisp, that siren, that emergency, it's still here. It's still loud and a bit distracting for me, but it's not distracting for anybody else on this call or on my call. Again, if I turn Krisp off, that emergency is still happening. It's still here. You can hear it all. But with Krisp on, nobody else is going to be impacted or distracted with that. Different set of noises. Things that we just experienced, like dogs, sirens, babies, won't be in the office. But that background chatter of another 100 agents, or if it's an open office environment, people having discussions, and at the same time, we're all required to be on online meetings. Because even though we're in the office, we're not doing in-person meetings as much as we're doing online meetings. And these online meetings in the office, people will have earbuds in, they'll have a headset on so that they can hear better. But all that background noise will be coming through to the other users. So if without Krisp working in an office or in a contact center, this is what comes through. If you think about calling into a contact center and having that personal conversation, but also hearing 50 or 100 other agents, it's distracting. It makes it feel like it's not a personal and private conversation. But in the same scenario, when you have Krisp on and all these other agents are talking and the phones are ringing and there are office machines going, as a customer calling in, it really creates more of a cone of silence. Again, without Krisp, you would hear all the other agents and their phones ringing, and not know that that agent is either inside a contact center with hundreds of people or at home with their dog barking or a rooster crowing. So a little bit more about Krisp. We have been recognized by some of the leading publications, and we have been tested throughout the world, and both for at home, in the office, and since Krisp works bidirectionally, we're also able to remove the noise and fix the voice quality for customers on their inbound calls to allow agents to understand their customers better and clearer without being impacted by their background noise. Krisp has now been deployed around the world, both for companies, enterprises, contact centers, and individuals, well over 150 countries and across hundreds of millions of devices. and it's language independent. So we have Krisp in use with languages ranging from English to languages throughout Europe, and including tonal languages in Asia. Krisp is able to work. The key values of Krisp is that it works with every application that you use individually or that your company uses. So the same application that I'm using on Zoom for this webinar works equally well if I was a contact center agent using Genesys or Avaya, or if I was on a team meeting using Microsoft Teams, or any of the other thousands of applications that our customers have used Krisp with. One of the things that we found interesting is that on average, we have about 2,000 corporate accounts. On average, our customers use Krisp with about 5.5 different applications every month. And they are sometimes the ones you'd expect and the ones we show here, but surprised us was even the contact centers. We'd expect the contact centers to really be primarily using Genesys, Avaya, or 8x8, or whatever their contact center solution is. But we also saw them using it with Zoom. We saw it using them with Slack and a host of other applications within their company and with their customers. The other thing that's key for Krisp to ensure that it works every time microphone and every speaker. So today I'm speaking directly into my laptop, directly into my microphone on my laptop. If I was wearing earbuds, Bluetooth earbuds, Krisp would automatically recognize that and use the earbud stream. And if I was using a USB wired headset, as is the requirement for contact centers and contact center agents, we work equally well with that. So independent of application, independent of headset or microphone, and therefore Krisp works everywhere, every time. So going a little bit deeper, how do we do this? How do we create this magic? And a couple things. So depending on the size of company, we provide a range of solutions for deploying and managing Krisp. Smaller companies, individuals, we allow for Krisp to be downloaded and installed and managed by that individual user. As we get into larger, more complex enterprises and their IT organizations and specific requirements, we provide tools for deploying and managing remotely, making Krisp default within the system so that contact center agents, as an example, never need to download Krisp, never need to sign in, never need to touch Krisp. Their administrator can push it down to the device they're using, their laptop or desktop, with their customers and internally. At its core, when Krisp gets downloaded onto the machine, it becomes the microphone and speaker. Even though it's not physical, it's a virtual microphone and speaker. And as you can see here in this diagram, Krisp sits right in between my physical hardware, in my case today, my laptop, and the software I'm using for communications, and in this case, Zoom. So my voice travels to my physical microphone, gets passed through Krisp in real time, removes the noise, passes along rich, clean voice into Zoom, and then comes out on the other side. It works equally well on the inbound. So if I was on a call with my team and I had 4 people on there and 2 of them were in noisy places, I would be able to control my experience with them by removing their background noise as it comes to me, and so that I only hear their clear voice. This is really important for us in terms of providing the deployment and manageability tools so that it can be deployed at scale across large organizations. Like, very important that Krisp, as it gets deployed and operates locally on the end user's device or machine, it creates maximum security and privacy for our users and their customers. Krisp never takes voice and processes it and stores it in the cloud. Everything is done locally. And this is very, very important for our customers who have strict PCI requirements in the financial industry, strict HIPAA requirements in the healthcare and insurance industry. So because we operate and we process voice locally, we're able to adhere and become compliant by definition for those types of requirements, PCI and HIPAA. So why does this all matter? Who's caring about this and why? Well, as we've all heard in COVID, and we all know we've been working at home, tools that allows for employees who work at home to be more comfortable, to be more confident in themselves, knowing that their voice is always going to sound clear, that any sort of distraction or background noise happening around them or in their house or outside is not going to be heard by others, and folks will just get comfortable. We also have a lot of users working in both open office and shared workspaces. Before COVID, we had users in places like WeWork, where they were on calls like this, but in their open area using headsets, leveraging Krisp, so all that other background noise. For those of you who've been inside of WeWork, it's a busy place. It's a fun place to be in. It's not a great place to take and make calls, particularly in the open area. Krisp enables folks working in open office, in open areas, to be able to confidently make calls and have it in a private setting, even though you're in a public setting. And certainly inside contact centers. So even with the strategic push of agents working from home, in contact with the same solution that's removing all the different noises at home, deployed inside the contact center, provides the exact same comfort and confidence to that agent, knowing that all the distraction, all the noise, all the supervisors around them are not going to be leaked or transmitted to their customers on their call. And then some of our customers are digital nomads. They were before COVID, and now there are a lot more of them now. And if you think about those working on the beach or wherever they might be outside of home but still working, when I'm at home, I'll put on sometimes I'll do a virtual background of a beach. I think those digital nomads who are working on the beach, they'll do a virtual background of an office. But it allows folks to work wherever they want, wherever they are, wherever they need to be, without the risk of having background noise adversely impact their communications. So how Krisp is being used, that Krisp was going to go work for remote professionals and contact center agents. And we really targeted that and pushed on that. But what's happened is that Krisp has been adopted very broadly and horizontally across industries and horizontally across teams within certain companies. So clearly there's a big value and a big drive to ensure that contact center agents and their communications with customers are clear, efficient, without the distractions of background noise, whether that agent's at home or in the contact center. This is also translated to the agents themselves being happier in their job. So some statistics, again, from CCW, is that agents working at home have about an 80% retention rate. Agents working in a contact center have between a 40 and 60% retention rate. It's a big gap. So a lot of these contact centers are realizing work from home agents are happier, they stay longer, it's got an ROI to them, and that that agent is comfortable and happy. And Krisp is one of those tools, core tool inside their at-home and in contact center stack. We have a lot of customers who've started Krisp with their sales teams, and particularly those that are doing outbound SDRs and account managers who are on Zoom calls 4, 5, 6 times a day from different locations and doing pitches and listening to customers. And again, having Krisp on this, it ensures professionalism as it relates to communication and distractions. Product demos. You can't be doing a product demo and then apologize that a dog's barking or that your child's screaming or that there are others talking in the background. You need clear, crisp communication when you're sharing your product demos. Webinars. If I was in a noisy place, or if something happened where the FedEx driver came and my dog started barking, I would be really comfortable. I would hear it, but I would know that none of you would hear it, and it just makes things easier for the presenter. Team brainstorms. A lot of times in Slack, they need to be really efficient. If there are a lot of background noise and people can't understand or hear going on and off mute, it makes it less efficient. And we see our engineering teams doing their huddles and ensuring that everybody's got Krisp enabled to ensure that they've got their clear communications. One-on-one meetings. We had a customer tell us how important one-on-one meetings are for them, and that with their employees at home and managers at home, that a lot of time they were getting interrupted and having to say, "Oh, sorry about that. Sorry about that noise." And the one-on-one meetings are so important, particularly in the era of COVID, particularly where we're bringing more and more empathy into our interactions with customers and internally, ensuring that one-on-one has no distractions and that it's valued by the manager and by the employee. We're able to help out in that interaction. Certainly all hands live stream for companies to ensure that executives don't have the distractions and don't have to apologize for distractions during live streams. We've got a lot that noise doesn't leak through and impact their podcasts and having them require them to re-record. And recruiting. Companies hiring are constantly on Zoom doing video calls. And there's no doubt if it's distracting, the candidate looks back at the company, and if they can't have a quiet professional communication, it shows negatively on the company trying to hire that candidate. So lots of different use cases, lots of different interesting ways that Krisp is being used. At its core, it's all about ensuring that there's clear communication and removing those background distractions that adversely impact customer and internal calls. So, like most businesses, we like to hear back from our customers. The good news for us is most of it's good or really good. Clearly, from both professional users and contact center agents, we've been delivering value and really fixing a serious problem for them. We get to speak to our end users sometimes who are contact center agents, and a while back we had time with a group of agents from the Philippines who were pushed a skyrocketing number of complaints from customers about background noise on their calls. Concerned that they were talking and sharing financial information and not sure what the environment of that home-based agent was. The agents knew that. They were uncomfortable. When there was a background noise that came through and the customer complained about that, the agent would have to review that with their manager on a weekly basis. The agent knew that all this was happening, and every time a noise came in, they'd have to apologize for it. As soon as this customer decided to deploy Krisp across their employee base, it took the agents about 2 weeks to trust Krisp, even though it worked right away, and even though the widget's telling them it's working. They were so trained to be responsive and reactive to noises and having to apologize or the customer asking about it. But in about 2 weeks, they got comfortable. They knew that Krisp was removing all their background noise, that their voice was being transmitted clearly, so that when a rooster was crowing, the agents knew that the customers couldn't hear it, and they relaxed a little bit. So their agent, employee happiness the week before installing Krisp to the week after, and customer satisfaction CSAT score was raised by 8% in that same time window. So a very quantifiable result of Krisp being deployed inside a high quality function, and something that's really important for customer satisfaction back with companies. So where do we see things going? Clearly, we're seeing companies around the world organize and invest in technology to improve their employee experience. We've heard about the great resignation of the past 6 months. As I mentioned early, businesses and employees are in process of resetting the rules. And that's got a little bit of ways to go to see how that really bottoms out. But while we go through these cycles, we're seeing companies invest in tools and technology for their employees to be productive, to be safe and secure, to be happy while working from home and working from the office, and demanding it of their suppliers. So companies and vendors in the market are focused on providing tools that improve the efficiency, improve customer satisfaction, improve all these things around product and customer interaction, but are now putting equal weight to ensure that their employees have that same type of attention and same type of tools and same type of technology that allows them to be efficient, effective, independent of where they're working. We see this increasing, and it's also interesting to see how some of the bigger organizations are starting to organize around it. Some of them are focused on real estate technology. Others are focused on digital transformation. So every company has a little bit of different wording or different organization structure about it. But at its core, it's about investing in tools and technology that improve your business and improve your employees' work experience. Both are equally valuable. We're seeing them realizing that clear communication is a differentiator, that they can guarantee that their agents are not going to have a poor CSAT score or an increase in the time on the call because of poor communication or because of background noise distractions. And they're beginning to promote this out to their customers and out to the market, that we as a contact center have a home-based program. It's strategic for us. Here are the tools that we have. One of the most important tools that we have is Krisp. Krisp ensures that our agents have crystal clear communications with your customers every time. So we're seeing increased deployment and increased communication of this capability from contact centers out to their largest customers. And as we think about what's next, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of tools that are coming in to do Where it's going is, how do we know that we're communicating well? How do I know that as a salesperson, I'm making good eye contact in my online interactions and not talking like this? How do I know whether or not I'm talking too much in a customer call and not listening enough? So as Krisp's technology and product evolves, we will be providing that type of feedback to our users and to the companies that have deployed Krisp. We see this as something very, very valuable, something that will continue to improve both the employee experience by allowing them to improve and grow how they communicate, particularly in an online world. And it'll prove to be very valuable for the companies to have analytics about their online communication, whether it's internal or with customers, because it translates directly to customer satisfaction and it translates directly to employee happiness and their satisfaction. So thank you for spending time with us today. We've saved about 10 minutes for Q&A, and they will be sent over to me. So just one moment, I'm going to take a look down and provide some responses to you. So question number one, when Krisp was first launched in places with a lot of background noise, the application not only filtered out the unwanted sound effectively, it also caused the speaker's voice to clip at times. Has this been resolved? And the answer is yes. So I will say this, what we do technically is very difficult. And if it wasn't so difficult, there would be many, many, many companies doing exactly what we do. But it's very, very difficult to separate in real time clean human voice and noise and then pass along that clean human voice. But our model has improved over the last couple of years dramatically. It was very, very good to start, and now it's extraordinarily good. So we're able to remove difficult noises like sirens and unpredictable noises that are loud and still maintain good voice quality without clipping any voice. Question number two, Discord servers use Krisp? Yes. And the answer is yes. So we have a strategic relationship with Discord where Krisp application is, Krisp technology is embedded into Discord for both their desktop and voice a year for Discord users. Number three, if I use the Krisp application on my laptop and the platform, let's say Discord has Krisp native, does it conflict? And the answer is no. Krisp by definition works with all applications, and by definition, all applications have various audio processing going on. Krisp has the intelligence to know what's been processed and how to process it so that we deliver clean voice and remove the background noise. If you have Krisp with Discord on and you're using Krisp with other applications, there's absolutely no conflict. Number five, another time you absolutely need a quiet environment and where Krisp can help is when you have an interpreter on the call. Interpreters need crystal clear audio. They are literally hanging on every word. If we can't hear or decipher it, we can't translate it. For you translator and interpreters out there, absolutely, Krisp allows for understanding what is being said independent of language. It's a really interesting use case. Number six, do you have any suggestion on microphones and setups for working at home? I personally have a green screen and a Blue Yeti mic, which feeds into a Behringer USB hub mixer. I wonder if there's any things I can do to my setup. Well, it sounds like you got a pretty good setup. a more sophisticated setup than most with green screen. And we know that green screen provides a good virtual backgrounds, but we're seeing and we will be providing video backgrounds that don't need green screens. In terms of your setup, I think your setup's good. The thing about using Krisp is that it is microphone independent. So we're able to deliver this great voice quality without you needing to spend money on high-end microphones or high-end headsets. Some of our podcast customers, because of how they're recording, will have high-end microphones. But for professional users and contact center agents with their headsets, we're able to deliver on the quality without you having to invest in higher end headsets. But I will say your setup sounds filter incoming speaker noise and voice. And the answer is yes. So Krisp is bidirectional. So the example is if I'm on a call with my team and I have Krisp on, I have it on for me on the outbound to ensure that any background noise I have, that I'm able to remove that. I also have it on for the inbound so that anybody on that call that has background noise, I'm able to filter it, remove it, and only hear their clean voice. So I'm not asking them what, or I'm not asking them to go on mute. Do you have any statistics on employee retention? Some of the statistics we have seen has really been focused on the contact center space, and it's been mostly focused on employees or contact center agents working at home versus working in the contact center. And in the last 18 to 24 months, the industry has results that show that retention of employees working at home is almost 2 times higher than those working in a contact center. That relates to commute, work environment, work-life balance. So it's tools to be successful and to give them the comfort of being successful while working at home. So that was the last question. Great questions. Thank you, everybody. I want to thank you again for joining us today. Here is my contact information. Happy to be in contact with any and all of you. And again, thank you for taking time with us, and look forward to another webinar from Krisp in the near term. Have a great rest of the day, everyone. Thank you.